Welcome to Revenue Mind, where revenue leaders get real about mental health. I'm Julie. Stick around for honest stories, practical insights, and why well-being is the real bottom line. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to Revenue Mind, a podcast where revenue leaders talk about all things mental health. I'm Julie, your host, and with us is Jason. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Jolie. Thanks for having me. Excited this is one of my favorite topics, so looking forward to having our little discussion here.
Yeah, for sure. So before we get started, what makes you, you?
Interesting. I would say all of my experiences, and I've had a lot of experiences. I'd say, everything from early childhood and how I was raised into I spent some time in the Marine Corps, college. Everything has really shaped me and made me who I am today. And and I would say lots of learning, lots of exploring myself, learning about myself. I'm still learning today. So keeping an open mind and growing, I would say, always being open to growing and knowing that I don't know it all.
That's great. My thing is always be curious.
Yeah.
I think instead of always be closing, a growth mindset, I think gets us where we need to be. It got me where I need to be. So that's really good to hear. And you do have a lot of experiences, both professionally and personally. So we're going to get into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an open book usually. So yeah, happy to share all kinds of stories I've got.
Awesome. All right. So on to the questions. You ready?
Let's do it.
Sweet. So speaking of being an open book, you mentioned you didn't realize you had anxiety until you were 40. What finally made you see it, and how did that change how you handle stress at work?
I would always think about anxiety as I probably just had the wrong definition of it for most of my life, where I would think of anxiety as my heart's racing, just a feeling of wanting to get out of something. And I didn't have that, I didn't have heart racing. I didn't have that kind of thing. But what I did have is a lot of doubt and worry. And I didn't realize that those are also signs of anxiety. And I would constantly be trying to think ahead 5 steps to avoid failure or avoid something bad or catastrophic happening. And just didn't realize that I was living my life like that, which really is cornerstone of anxiety. In terms of how it changed how I handle stress at work, just I think number one, just realizing that a lot of this worry and trying to make sure nothing went wrong and thinking 5 steps ahead, just knowing that that is anxiety. And that's not a normal, well, I don't want to call it normal, but it's not a healthy way of operating. And along with a lot of that comes self-doubt, what a lot of people call impostor syndrome. And I would always be looking for people to tell me I was doing a good job. That was my sign that I'm doing okay, and not within myself. And so the way I started to change things at work was well, Jason, you're 40. You've gotten to this place. It didn't just happen by accident. And so you must be doing some things right, at least. So give yourself some credit. Also, just a lot of work, in counseling and trying to just go back in my history. Because, a lot of the things that most of the things we deal with from a mental health perspective today can be traced way back to our childhoods. You're really, and I never really believed that, but when you really think about it, you're forming all of your views on the world and how you handle things. And a lot of that is formed through your parental relationships, your other early relationships. So going back and trying to because I would always be, and I still am today a little bit, I'm still working on this a little bit today. It's I always want to be looking forward. It's things that have happened in the past have happened in the past. Let's forget about those and let's just look forward and move forward. But that often you can't do it. That's not the way it works. Sometimes you have to go back in time and you have to address some of those things from the past so that you can move forward. And so doing some of that allowed me to start to at least understand some of the reasons for the anxiety, tracing it back, and then dealing with those things. So yeah, that's basically how I started changing the way I operated at work to feel less anxiety and to really operate not from a place of fear, but more from a place of like opportunity.
I always used to think I was getting fired. That was my
Oh yeah, I've been through that. I've been
experience
through that. Oh
for
yeah.
over and over again. Like, oh, this was like probably early to mid, even late 20s. Like, I thought every time my boss was in a room with someone or
Yep.
they were in a boardroom or what, it was always about me. And I like
Yeah.
how we all think it's
I
about us. We all think it's like,
yep.
oh, they're talking about me. No, they're not.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember specifically, I was on vacation once, and I can remember I pick and picture exactly where I was for zero reason for me to think this, but I had gotten a message or something from my boss at the time, just a benign, "Hey, Jason, can we chat? I know you're on vacation, but blah, blah, blah." I could not have a good day. I could not have a good time that day, just all in my head. I was like, "Something's going wrong." So you catastrophize things. And that's also hard on yourself because then you're missing out on what it could be. And you're just like sunk in the negative. You're just seeing like the worst case scenario, which is not a fun way to live. It's not, and it's not helpful for you.
It is fucking exhausting.
It is.
It is exhausting. And so many people, I feel like we don't talk about it, but we're all in our heads, not enjoying the moment. I feel like I missed out. I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure if you have experiences, but I feel like I missed out on like 10 years
Oh, yeah.
with
No, for
anxiety.
sure. Yeah. And it's one of those things where you don't want to beat yourself up about it, right? Because it's like, everybody takes their own path. But for sure, yeah, there was years, decades almost, that I lived in that way. And I totally missed out on living in the moment. I missed out on feeling positive things, around me, opportunities. So, yeah, but I'm just happy that I have figured it out so that I don't have to carry that with me. And now I can see like what it's like on the other side and enjoy things more and live more in the moment.
Exactly. I remember when it lifted, like when it was finally gone,
Mm.
like, the obsessive thinking, the anxiety, whatever comes with it. And it is the most freeing thing.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Mine wasn't a moment. Yeah. Mine took time. It just kind of gradually changed, but it fairly rapidly. It was like over the course of a year and a half, a year and a half, something like that. So I didn't have a light switch moment, but I could tell things were changing. And people around me could tell things were changing as well. For example, like even now, if I talk to somebody that I haven't talked to in years, Jason, you seem so much calmer. You seem just like your confidence, has changed and they can actually see that and they can tell it if, again, if I haven't talked to them in a couple of years. And that's a nice feeling. Yeah. It's kind of like, I don't feel that. Well, yeah, I guess I do feel that different, but it kind of happened over the course of a couple year period.
so going to the revenue side. So marketing can be intense. Did you ever lean on unhealthy coping habits and how did you pivot to healthier or alternatives?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Weed was my number one choice. Never really a big alcohol guy. I just really, I don't know, didn't like the way it made me feel the next day. I'd have a great time the night of, but the next day I'm like, this is not worth it. And so, yeah, I got in a really good, really solid weed habit, but really from early days. Like it's from late teenage years. And I took literally just maybe a couple years off here and there, and that's it. That was how I was dealing with anxiety. And I thought I was. And it worked for a while. It worked for years until it stops working. And my theory is that, you know, weed triggers anxiety. You can like smoke weed and be paranoid. And that's not a great feeling, right? I remember like some early days, just some serious paranoia, right? Just like everyone's coming out to get me. And so the theory or the story I make up for myself, and this may or may not be true, but that the longer I used it, and it was an everyday thing, the more I would put my body into that anxiety state. And the body just in my mind and body just got used to that state. And so that then just became my perpetual state of anxiety. So I think it definitely contributed. I think early on it kind of helped. And then I think it absolutely contributed. And the way I steered around that one, and that this is just like I'm a year and a half in at this point, but I started by just getting healthier generally. And so I started working out a lot. I started climbing mountains, doing bigger and bigger hikes and set goals for myself where, all right, I had a goal to climb Mount Rainier, and the training for that took a lot of time. It was like an hour and a half to 2 hours of training per day, 6 days a week. As you're older, I'm 40 something. It takes a little bit more than if I were in my 20s. I could probably get away with barely doing any training, and that would just take time. And so I didn't have time, and I would never train stoned, like that. To me, that just wouldn't make any sense. And so it kind of kept me away from it. And then also the endorphins you get from working out and all the other benefits that go along with it just kind of, for me, was nice. It made it like an easy transition. But I thought I could keep dabbling in it and I'll be okay. But then I just got to the point where I was like, well, it's like I've gotten rid of all the other crutches in my life. I'm so much healthier in all these aspects of my life. And this is just holding me back in my mind, in my own mind. And I was like, and if I still need it every day, or maybe not every single day, but pretty close to it, even if it's just at night or, once before bed, that's still something that's a crutch for me and a vice. And I wanted to just try and get rid of all of it. So then I was like, all right, let's do it. But it was actually really, really easy for me in terms of like the mental part to completely stop, because I had kind of made that transition over like the last year. Physically, it was difficult, like physically, like sleeping. And honestly, actually, when I stopped, my fitness level went way down. It was interesting initially, because then I did a lot of reading about this. It was actually keeping my heart rate normalized by having the marijuana in my body. And so without it, then my heart was like, what am I doing? And I would go on like a normal, just like a basic hike, and my heart rates are like 160, 170 the entire time. And I'm like, this is when it would normally be like 120 or 130 doing the same hike. I'm like, this ain't good. But that took about 2 months. The sleeping took a couple months to stabilize. The dreams were wild. But then, yeah, but since then it's been like, all right, this is and I developed some other new habits as well, like reading. I never was a reader ever. So I picked up reading. And so, yeah, that's really how I transitioned out of it.
It's really interesting because I know people that did exactly what you did, myself included. So I've been sober for 3 years. And when I was actively drinking, it was to treat my mental health challenges. So I was completely self-medicating.
Yep.
But the problem is with that is it makes it worse.
Yeah.
We think it's going to make it better, but like you said, like it brings out depression, it brings out anxiety. The next day, you're a total shit show.
Yeah.
You're like, oh wait, but I feel really good in the moment.
Yeah.
So let me keep doing this. And then it's just like you said, it becomes your natural circadian rhythm and it just becomes a new normal, and it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. And most people that aren't drinking or smoking to celebrate, they're doing it more as a habit. It's tied up in some kind of a mental health challenge, and they're self-medicating for the most part because something's not right. And that's, again, I'm not a doctor, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people tied up in that, and they don't know because it's, you're fine. You know what I mean? Like they can keep a job, keep a normal job, keep a great job even. Your body can get used to it in some ways. And then you don't realize it till you're out of it. Like, oh, wow, this is better. Oh man, my head got so much clearer. And I didn't realize it because I've been doing it so many years. I was like, well, I felt like my head was clear, but that was just my normal. So like now I'm like super clear headed and even in a better mood during the day. So yeah, a lot of positives from it.
Definitely. I love your point about exercise too.
So important.
It's so important for mental health.
It is so important. Yeah.
My mom told me for years, and I didn't, I'm like that I'm rebellious teenager, 20s. I don't want to exercise. I'll just be skinny fat. I'll just
Yeah.
eat one meal a day. And,
Right.
classic girl shit. Like it's just so, so, so important. And then there's so many studies on it. And like
Yeah.
mental illness, no mental illness, just move. Just
Yeah.
go outside. Like
Yep.
nature's amazing. Like something that I got taught was, and you probably know about this, the walking meditation where you look at different objects and it calms your mind. Stuff like that is just
Yeah.
you just walk.
Yeah, for me, it's the combo of being outside in nature, and I really like to get out there where like my cell phone doesn't work. Although now I got satellite, so now it's like the phones even work
We got
and I'm
started.
in the middle of nowhere, which is kind of nice. But yeah, it's that plus the exercise for me that really helps.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're big on sleep, exercise, and nutrition, like we just talked about.
Yeah.
Why do you think these basics are so critical for leaders, and how do you make them non-negotiable in a busy schedule?
Yeah. I'll start with sleep first. Sleep just fascinates me because if you like really take a step back and you look at it, you're like, you spend a third of your life in just a random coma where you're just like completely out of it. It's like, if you really think about it, it's like, it's weird, but sleep, I read this book, Why We Sleep, and it was fascinating to me, just so eye opening. Had no idea just how important sleep is, what happens when you're sleep deprived, how you can get used to a 6 hour night sleep, but it does not, you're not used to it. It's just like your body is kind of adapted, but you're definitely not at your best. So anybody that says, no, man, I can work on 5, 6 hours. No, you can't. You could be actually better on 7.5, 8 hours of sleep a night. The restoration that happens, and not just that, but the dreaming. The dreaming is important. The REM sleep, the deep sleep, the good mix of all of it. It's just so critical. So that's one thing where I just don't negotiate on that. I like go to bed about 9, wake up about 5, and I wake up naturally. So it's not like I don't need an alarm clock ever. And when you're at that point, you're getting enough sleep for the most part. So that's one area. Then nutrition. I've dug in a little bit, but it's probably out of the three, the one that I know about the least. I just know how important it is to eat whole foods. So I just really try and focus on whole foods because the processed foods and actually, I read another book called Breathe, and it actually talks about how when we entered like the industrialized revolution and foods became softer because we processed these foods, our jaw lines, our skulls shape and structure changed. And so that's why a lot of people have breathing problems now. It goes back to that change from like having to chew and gnaw on things, you know, to these soft processed foods. So it's not just the content, it's the consistency of the foods. So for foods, I try, and I'm not great at this because I actually do love my food. So like I probably like 50% maybe. But then on the exercise, yeah, that's another one where for me, I can so tell a difference. Like if I've gone a couple days and I haven't been able to exercise and I get in the gym, it's like I'm on a drug, when I'm done. It's like I remember we were at our SKO a couple weeks ago and I was so busy, and I finally found a time to do a run. And I got done with the run and I rejoined people and they were like, what are you on? I'm like, oh my God, you can tell that difference, I'm like, nothing. I'm on a runner's high, I'm like literally but I felt I could feel the difference. And so I just really prioritize those things. And so I literally have time in my calendar blocked out for working out 4 days during the work week and then one day on the weekend. And I don't compromise it. My wife and I just have a deal. She's like, she understands that how important that is for me and my mental health and health. Even on the weekends, I do a big hike and she doesn't come with me. So I'm gone for half or 3/4 of a day every weekend as well. And I work so much during the week. And so it's just like she understands though that she's gonna get the best Jason, with that. And I know that too. It has so much to do too. Like it can regulate so many things. It can regulate anxiety, it can regulate mental health issues. And so again, exercise, all those things together, but exercise really is a big one for me. And you
Right.
can go too far, right? So like you can get to the point you can swap one negative addiction with a positive addiction, right? So like people can they got to watch that, so you don't want to go to like all of a sudden you're going from like couch to an Iron Man, like so there's a balance in there for sure. But yeah, I think if you keep a nice, rhythm, a nice like cut out enough time, but you have enough time for other things, I think it's good. Sometimes I feel like all I do is work and work out, but so then I'll gonna be, and I try not to get hard on myself if I miss a day or two. It's like I'm just trying to like, hey, you're doing other things, you're participating in life, it's okay. But one of these books I read, oh, it was the Atomic Habits book, was talking about like if you're in a routine, if you miss one day, you're fine. 2 days in a row, though, you're off to another. You're creating a new habit. It's a negative habit. And so you want to like, even if it's working out, Even if you normally work out for an hour and a half, get in there for 15 minutes on that day too. Don't miss it. Now, if you're sick and whatever, that obviously all that changes things. But if you're healthy and you're just like, I don't want to do it, get your butt in there. Don't miss the second day. And so, because the second day does start a different habit.
Well, that's awesome. I wrote Atomic Habits too. There was a time last summer when I was doing spin 7 days a week and walking my dog twice a day for pretty long walks. And your mood just skyrockets. So I love that line where someone's like, "Who are you?" Like,
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing with Atomic Habits that I think is really good that stuck with me is you want to have a vision of who you want to be. And then every day you want to ask yourself, this vision of who I want to be, what would they do today? What would they be doing right now? So if I'm like, hey, I want to climb Mount Rainier. And if I think about, well, would a mountain climber be taking a bong rip right now? You know what I mean? Like maybe. Yeah. Because mountain climbing is like, so maybe. But like probably not every day, would they be eating this shit? Yeah, probably not. And that's just a nice frame of reference to have too, is like, give yourself that vision of who you want to be. And even if it's like it's a person that you know or something or just like you've described it to yourself, then ask yourself every day when you're thinking about doing things or when you're setting up your habits, like, would this person be doing that? And let that guide you.
that's great. Another thing something along those lines, I had a friend that used to, at the end of every day, she said, "Did I have a good day?"
Hmm.
And it's not like mentally, did I have a good
Yeah.
day? It's like, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, like, did I accomplish what I set out to do? And then she evaluated every day, and every day was at 1%, that 1% incremental
Mm.
that everyone
Yeah.
talks about. But it's did I achieve what I wanted? And then to your point, what you said is about the self-compassion. I think I was talking to Natalie from Nevada, and we were talking about how we're all so hard on ourselves.
Yep.
And like for your example with missing that second day, I've been out of the gym for a month or two, and I'm so pissed at myself. I was I was walking my dog today and multitasking, but on a call, I think they thought I was dying. I was breathing so hard because I'm in Colorado. I'm in 5,000 feet.
Yep.
I hadn't exercised in 2 months. I have very valid reasons, but
But it's still hard. You can
but
still, even with valid reasons, and that's even still hard for me today. And that's something I still work on with my counselor, is that like not being hard on yourself. I've gotten better for sure, but I still do get hard on myself on a lot of things. And so, yeah, that's probably one of my bigger growth areas I'm still working on. Again, gotten a lot better, but I still get down on myself and pretty hard on myself if I don't reach a certain thing or don't, make something happen or miss too many days, or even if I get sick and I'm like trying to get back at it too quickly, which is just makes you more sick sometimes. So yeah, that self-compassion is hard, especially for people who are really driven. Because a lot of times, unfortunately, and actually, especially like people my age, they were raised in that kind of like not good enough place. And that is what ended up motivating us. And so sometimes and it's hard to see like, well, you can be motivated positively too, with compassion. How does that motivate? It doesn't even make sense, but it's true. And so, but trying to learn that and trying to switch is tough on that one.
yeah, for sure. There was a time, and I don't know if it's as bad now because I don't have kids, but where it was the complete opposite, and people were too nice to the
Yeah,
next generation, and
that can happen too.
my
Yep.
generation, we became entitled brats.
Yep. Yeah, or the parents did everything for them and didn't let them experience natural consequences of things,
Exactly.
and then they grow up and they don't know how to handle anything. That's 100% a problem right now. I see it a lot, unfortunately, and I think parents are starting to get a little bit like starting to go back that way. But when I was raising my kids, I was that way a lot. Part of that was the anxiety, right? It's like I didn't want bad things to happen to them, and so I would do it or I would handle it. But with my kids are 4.5 years apart. So with the second one, I was able to kind of realize that a little bit more. And he is able to like really manage himself, you know what I mean? And take care of things. And a lot of them don't want to even make a phone call. You know what I mean? They're like anxious about making a phone call, and he'll pick up the phone and call, and so, yeah, you can definitely make them soft on accident by just doing the right, you think you're doing the right thing, if 100%, and most parents do. And it's like, well, I'm protecting them from all the bad things in the world. Well, experiencing a lot of those bad things is how we learn how to deal with adversity, because we're all going to have adversity as adults. So we need to learn how to deal with it at an earlier age. So yeah, if I had to raise kids again, I would definitely, every parent would say this, there's a lot of things you would change how you did it. And that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, for sure. Kids is definitely one thing. And part of us, at least for me, that self doubt is, I think, stays with us for a long time. And we have to, and that's something it sounds like you worked on. So when you still feel that self doubt creeping in, what's your go to strategy for staying confident under pressure?
That's a good question, because it still happens to me. Not as much, but it happened to me recently. I was at an event in London, and we were sponsoring this event, and I had a little chance to get up and say something. And I said something. And then later on that evening, the kind of guest speaker got up and kind of trashed what I said. And this guy was kind of known for being, he's like in the tabloids and stuff, pretty well known person in the UK. And oh my God, did I feel so small. I was in the back of the room and I hear this and I like pull up my phone pretending I'm on my phone. So I'm like, I can't deal with this right now. And then I literally get up casually, like everything's fine, walk downstairs because this was in the office, our office is there. And I just had to process it. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, whoa, was I wrong? Was I? And I actually went into a little bit of a spin. Finally got to the point where, like, listen, Jason, get yourself, pull yourself together, get back up there and just deal with it. And I went back up and sure enough, people were like, man, he didn't really like what you said. And I'm like, nope, can't please everybody, but at least he's talking about me, kind of thing. And I remember getting back to my hotel room and I called my wife and I told her all about it. She's like, I want to kill this guy. First of all, she gets all, but then I use my wife helps me a lot. She's my biggest cheerleader, I would say. And so using her to kind of just like, all right, kind of, but it was weird for me because I hadn't felt that way in a long time. Putting myself back out there, head of marketing at a larger company instead of like fractional CMO at all these smaller companies, which is really pretty easy to do. And you're not putting your neck out there, right? Because like you're just fractional CMO. And I was like, Jason, this is what you signed back up for. It's like you gotta have some thicker skin. So yeah, that was tough. But I think for me, I try and put it in perspective, first of all, and realize like, and honestly, time helps. So I felt bad for a couple of days. It kind of really got me for a couple of days. And then over the night, the the feeling bad about myself was like a day or two. But then like the lingering effect was like probably another couple of days. So time will help, with those kinds of things too. But just reminding myself that that doesn't define me. This is not something, maybe this doesn't work in the UK, it works in the US, whatever, cultural differences, whatever. But it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, you have to be happy with yourself as a human being first and not define yourself as your work. And so as long as I don't do that, I'm like, and you have other hobbies and you have other passions, you're like, well, you know what? Somebody didn't like it. 150 people heard it. It's not a huge deal, And then also, hey, by the way, I've stuck in the mind of a billionaire in the UK. So at least, there's that. And so I still think he's a dick, but like and we paid him to be there. So like, come on, man, but anyway, I digress. Like you can tell I'm still harboring a little bit of,
Oh, you can
little anger.
totally harbor. I don't hold grudges or anything. No, I tend to, that's a really good point. I used to shut down.
Yeah.
Definitely used to shut down, especially in the beginning of my career. So speaking of Pixis, so you've worked with a lot of high pressure teams, Marketo, Lytics, Metadata. Actually used to listen to that podcast all the time when I was studying B2B marketing. And now your current role. So what have you learned about building a culture that respects well-being as much as hitting targets?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things that I do when I'm interviewing people is I ask them and I throw them a curveball at the end. It's not a huge curveball. It shouldn't be. But I say, what do you do for fun? And I make sure people have an actual answer, that they have something that they do outside of work and they don't struggle to find an answer. And I do most people have an answer, I find. Some people struggle. And to me, that's kind of a warning sign. And then also, as I'm onboarding or interviewing, people and talking about what it's going to be like working here, I talk about the importance of. So I had this conversation recently with somebody I hired. It was like they had like a side gig going that was maybe a little bit more involved than I was comfortable with. I mean, at least they were, told me about it. And I just said, the thing for me is I want all of your mind and I want you to be able to do other things, but I want you to have time for your family. You've got a new child. I want you to have time for your family. I want you to have time to do things outside of work. That's what's most important to me. I do want you to have a side thing, but I think this one might take a little too much of your time. So that's one of the things. And then the other thing is just leading by example. That's the most important thing. If you say it and don't do it, people are not going to listen to what you say. They're going to do what you do. And so for me, I tell people right out of the gate, I tell people things like, I don't have Slack notification turned on my phone ever. It's not just I turn them off at night. Just my phone is not the place for me to get a Slack notification, So if I'm away from my computer, Slack is not, you have my phone number because everybody I work with has my phone number. Text me if it's important. Things like today, somebody actually asked me like, hey, do you have any more time today? I said no, because after this podcast I'm doing, I am working out and then I have a counseling appointment. And I'm not willing to the old me would have been like, sacrifice the workout to please you and but really being protective of that time and showing and talking about that with people, blocking out times in my day for a break or lunch and being protective about that stuff, not overworking, it's like, I'm very clear. I'm about a 9-hour a day guy. I'm not really, sometimes I'll say usually I try not to work on the weekends at all, but sometimes on a Sunday night, I'll just kind of pull things up and kind of look where I'm at. I try to avoid that. So it's living it as well as talking about it. And that's what people really see. And that's the only thing that can really make it okay in a culture that you're building. Well, so many people they'll say it, but then they don't do it.
Yeah. Oh,
And then they think well, because I'm the VP or I'm under different rules. Well, that's not true, And I think it's just so important to lead by example. That's the only way to lead, really.
yeah, that's a really good point. It comes from the top down. Like I've worked at companies where they were all workaholics and
Yep.
they expected the same of us. And
Yep.
it created a very toxic culture. And I tend to get very zoned into things. So I was working on a side thing and I was spending all weekend on it, like building and building and building and building. And then my fiance went out of town. I canceled all my friends' plans and just worked on it for 7 days.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's some
So
dedication.
little intense. Yeah. Yeah. I put it was bad. And I got called out. And if we don't have a life outside of work, it's a little sad.
People used to ask me what my hobby was, and I'd say work. I was like, I like to work. And, when you have little kids, it is hard. It's hard because you're like work and then you're doing your kids' stuff. My kids are older out of the house now, so it's a lot easier for me. And, once they become teenagers, you're still driving them. And then once they drive, you're like, okay, you're starting to see starting to see the sky again. So I do have empathy for people that are working in a demanding job and have little kids. That's hard to do. And it's hard to have hobbies for yourself. So I get that in that kind of 15-year period, which is a long time. But you get a pass on that one almost, But hopefully you do have some things that even if you're maybe with a family together, you're doing hobbies and that kind of thing. Hopefully that's the case. That wasn't really for me. But when you do have that space, it's like you definitely want to have things outside of work and you want to pace yourself with work too. You can easily burn out. And if you burn out, you're no good to anybody. And you are the only one that can really protect that time and know if that's happening or not. And the kind of leader that I like to be, as I've worked in places where I've had the CEOs or whatever, but I'll be that middle ground shield, right? Where I'm like, well, that's what they're doing, but I'm not going to do it. And sometimes that causes a lot of friction. But the people that are working for you at least see okay, That's what I'm going to look at as the example, not up a level, so that they can do their best work. Because like if they're going to get burned out, if they're grinding too much, they're not going to do their best work, and that's not what I want.
Yeah. There's a company I worked at where the CEO demanded that we all work 60 hours.
Oh yeah,
To
hell no.
say,
Immediate out. Immediate red flag. Yeah.
yeah. First of all, I don't think that's legal. I don't know. I
Yeah. No.
don't know if
Yeah.
that's legal, but a person resigned because of it, because the CEO told her to tell the team, or
Oh yeah.
because she was an account director, she's like, I'm done.
Oh yeah. Nope.
She quit on
No.
the spot.
Yep. That's exactly what I would do too. Yeah. No thanks. I don't need to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I love that you're so open about mental health. I'll probably cut this out too, but really enjoy. I haven't really spoken about mental illness on this on one of the episodes yet. So this is awesome.
I think it's important because I don't think it's talked about enough. I think there's still some stigma around it. There's a lot less than there used to be for sure, which is nice. And a lot more people, way more people are talking about it. There's way more people that are in counseling than than probably the same amount of people, but now you know more about it because people are more willing to talk about it. And I think it's becoming more of the norm. Like we all need help, and we all have demons and things that we're dealing with. And that's part of our life. And work and life are pretty merged together in a lot of times, especially in this age of connectivity, and all that stuff. So yeah, no, I think it's an important thing to talk about. I talk about it openly at work with the people that I work with, and I watch out for it. I watch out for it too in people that I work with in my team, and I'll ask them, hey, it doesn't seem like you're everything okay. And I think people, they want to be seen and heard, and so yeah, it's a good thing that people are talking about it more now.
Looking back, what's one piece of mental health advice you wish you'd been given earlier in your career?
That probably really around the confidence, imposter syndrome, that this is a real thing. I thought I was unique. I thought like I'm the only one dealing with this. They're gonna find me out. They're gonna find out I'm not cut out for this. I'm not fit for this. So just to know, I think just knowing earlier in my life what those things looked like and what they really meant, that would have been nice. To at least known about it earlier. And so yeah, just kind of like, and probably a little bit of like, give yourself some compassion. You need to give yourself some compassion because no one else really is going to. And I guess kind of thirdly, but related, it's like if you're dealing with something yourself and you're being hard on yourself, you got to look at like, well, what if a friend of yours was having that same issue? What would you tell them to do? And give yourself that same grace that you would tell your friend. Oftentimes, we have a different expectation of ourselves than we do for people around us that we care about and love. And so, why not have that same expectation, that softer consideration for ourselves too? And because we deserve it just as much as our friends and our loved ones do. And so, yeah, probably that.
That's awesome. It's almost like we think we don't deserve what we give.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
A lot
Yeah.
of us. All right. So, where can our listeners find you if they have any follow-up questions?
Oh, yeah. LinkedIn, always. I'm active on LinkedIn. I put out all kinds of stuff. Things about mental health sometimes, things about AI, marketing. So I try and hit on all the topics. But yeah, I'm always active on LinkedIn. So hit me up there, Jason Widup.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jason. This was great. Really, really.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I love talking about this stuff. And so, yeah, good luck with your podcast, and I've seen you've been doing several good episodes. And so congratulations on this and wish you nothing but the best with it.
Thank you so much. That's a wrap for Revenue Mind, where we cut the BS and spotlight mental health and revenue leadership. I'm Jolie, reminding you your mindset is your competitive edge. Thanks for listening. See you next time.